Let me read to you a passage from the 13th chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel, verses 36 to 43. It's the Gospel for Tuesday after the 17th Sunday of Ordinary Time. St. Matthew writes, Jesus dismissed the crowds and went into the house. His disciples approached him and said, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field." He said in reply, "He who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed, the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one, and the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the harvesters are angels. Just as weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect out of his kingdom all who cause others to sin and all evildoers. They will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Whoever has ears ought to hear." That's from Matthew chapter 13, verses 36 to 43. Our Lord speaks of the end. You know, while there is very often in this life some kind of rectification of the sharp contrast between the conduct of men and their fortunes, it scarcely balances out. A person is found guilty of a crime and executed. That might seem to be a rectification of the disorder of the crime he was found guilty of committing. But then, at a later date, it is discovered that he was innocent. Another gains power by brute force and spends the rest of his life causing suffering and evil to his own perceived advantage. He dies in his bed unpunished. The notion of a final readjustment after death that settles things fairly was prevalent among the peoples in pre-Christian times in one form or another. The doctrine of the transmigration of souls was one form of this imagined readjustment. The Egyptians had a precise image of a judgment and retribution after death, as set forth, for instance, in their Book of the Dead. Among the populace of the Persians, the Greeks and the Romans, there was an acceptance of the mythological depictions of a future judgment and a compensation. But very many of the learned saw in these myths only allegory, and skepticism grew and became widespread. It seems that Plato urged in many forms the argument from retributive justice and the necessity of future existence for an adequate reward of the good and punishment of the wicked. Now it is to be noted that while Aristotle, who lived from 384 to 322 BC, Plato's great disciple and one of the most illustrious thinkers of all time, was the real founder of systematic ethics, his ethics practically ignores the matter of a future life. Aristotle may be taken as an ancient and notable instance of the modern tendency to make morality independent of religion. While he teaches that the active intellect is indestructible, it is not certain that he did not understand this in a pantheistic sense. This lack of focus on a future life in Aristotle must surely be regarded as a singular lack for a total morality, as the common, if vague, belief of mankind shows. Man tends to believe that all will be made right beyond this life. I place the root of this presentiment in the conscience. The conscience intimates to the imagination a future reckoning, and all have a conscience. The fact is, though, as exemplified in the great Aristotle, that ancient paganism never clearly grasped that in the final analysis one great fact will decide all, the judgment of God. If this is the fact, as it is, then it is darkness not to live in the light of it. As a matter of fact, the appearance of the Christian religion began a new epoch in how the ethical life was to be understood. St. Paul had important things to say precisely on the moral law as accessible to the pagan world, and the judgment of God was a key item. God has written his moral law in the hearts of men, even of those outside the influence of the revelation of Jesus Christ. This law manifests itself in the conscience of every man and is the norm according to which the whole human race will be judged on the day of reckoning. While the law of God, written on the hearts of the peoples, had become obscured because of sin, still all would face the judgment of God. He will render to every man according to his works. Romans chapter 2 verse 6. St. Paul seems to suggest that the conscience bears witness not only to the law of God written on the heart, but to that day when God judges. Romans chapter 2 verse 15 to 16. There is a natural sense of the judgment of God. Of course, this had its foundation in the repeated, insistent, unambiguous teaching of Jesus Christ about heaven and hell and the judgment of God, which for all mankind will precede it. Which brings us to the gospel I read earlier from Matthew chapter 13 verse 36 to 43. For all the speculations of the philosophers, most valuable as many of them have been, Christ reveals the one ominous fact in the light of which all our actions must be determined. God will judge every man according to his works, as St. Paul writes. So it is that our Lord gives his simple and momentous teaching about the end. He says, just as weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect out of his kingdom all who cause others to sin and all evildoers. They will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Whoever has ears ought to hear. Matthew chapter 13 verse 36 to 43. We have been told from on high that at the end of every person's life there will be a divine judgment on his thoughts, words and deeds. Each must stand ready, for he knows not the day nor the hour when the Son of Man may come. Then at the end of the course of human history there will be a divine judgment on the whole of the human race, and the sheep will be separated from the goats. Once life has begun, it will inevitably end. No person has the choice about what is coming. Once the course of life has started, he must take in hand his life and live in the light of the judgment of God. He cannot say to himself, I have no part in all this business. He has no choice. He will face God's judgment. So he must resolve to live aright and in a manner that pleases God. If he puts his whole heart to the business and sets out for the goal of goodness of life in earnest, repenting constantly and seeking to live in the grace of Jesus Christ, his prospects are good and bright. But if he does not exercise his power of choice in this way, if he squanders his life, doom is ahead of him. To it then,